Welcome to a quick video essay on a somewhat lost period in Zeppelin history. Today we'll take a look at the Manticore Rehearsals, one of the most important music sessions the band ever conducted as a stepping stone coming back from adversity. The reasons will be explained on this episode, plus many interesting facts, including the John Jones puzzle. Let's go back to November 4th, 1976. Led Zeppelin attends the third movie premiere for The Song Remains the Same, this time in London's West End at the Warner Cinema. We can see all four members arrive for a third screening of a film that bought precious time away from their live concert business. Robert was still recovering from an almost fatal car accident in August 1975, and while he was no longer using a cane for assistance, sitting down was a much welcomed luxury. John Jones came back to a beard in public, something he hadn't done since 1971. A November 13th Sounds magazine cover shared Genesis tour details for the upcoming Wind and Wuthering tour of 1977. On the bottom right corner, a Led Zeppelin article discussing their London movie premiere and after party held at the Floral Hall at Covent Garden or the Royal Opera House. The hangar was covered by food, beer, wine, beer, and every form of entertainment money could buy, and more beer. Swan song expenses for this were something like £5,000, including Bonham and Plant getting real beer from Wolverhampton. Guests included Swan song proteges Maggie Bell, Bad Company, Dave Edmunds, and their pre-things. Other guests included Steve Hackett and Mike Rutherford from Genesis, Bill Connolly, Rick Wakeman, Roy Harper, Traffic's Jim Capaldi, former Page studio mate Big Jim Sullivan, the McCartneys, and John Lord, to name a few. To see the band that hadn't been on stage since May 25th, 1975 at Earl's Court was news to everyone in London. In the back of their heads, though, they knew they had to capitalize on the movie's momentum. It was not meant to be an isolated event. The film was to be part 2 of a 1976 plan to get the Zeppelin machine back up and running. Presence was a fascinating studio snapshot of resilience and racing against the clock. The Song Remains the Same was a world event that reminded everyone what a 1973 Led Zeppelin show was all about. And this included rock and roll thirsty American audiences that last saw them perform back in March 1975. A movie that would soon become a cult classic, fueled hardcore fan frenzy, and reignited many cold hearts turned warm again. Some of these hearts realized the Eagles' Hotel California wasn't going to fill the void left by the greatest band of the 70s. The United States became Led Zeppelin's primary target for a still top-secret comeback tour in the works. After being away from the scene for almost 2 years, the longest break they ever had, it was time to make some bread, fill their pockets with touring money gold, and reclaim their place in the live rock and roll hierarchy. But the big question was, of course, could they do it? Could they deliver the goods? Or was this their swan song to America? So this brings us to the band's first 2 rehearsal sessions in a very long time. The band was never big on rehearsals, as their pre-1973 busy concert schedules were good enough practice. They conducted some London sessions before their North American tour of 1973, a full-day soundcheck on January 1975 at Minneapolis before opening night, and on-site Earl's Court rehearsals some days before the event. So Emerson, Lake and Palmer had 2 albums worth of material scheduled for a 1977 release, plus a North American tour that wouldn't start until May that same year. Led Zeppelin decided to rent precious rehearsal space at ELP's Manticore Studios. You can check the story of Manticore Studios on my Welcome Back My Friends episode. So Led Zeppelin sessions would be the longest practice time the band ever embarked on since 1968. They used the old cinema area or Great Hall, and here we see this photograph, which has been endlessly dated January 1977, but no. This is November 1976, judging by Jones's facial hair in tune with his movie premiere look. This timeline was confirmed by Jimmy Page on a May 1977 issue of Gig magazine, stating sessions began a month before Christmas, meaning these shots were taken on the 4th week of November 1976, when the Scorpions' controversial Virgin Killer album cover was released. It was also the week Led Zeppelin's movie soundtrack ranked 2 on Billboard's 200 chart, only surpassed by Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life. Rest of the list was made up of great albums and heavy names in the industry. Presence was a different story. It was out of the Billboard chart by October, the shortest trajectory by a Zeppelin album. Rehearsals at Manticore had many objectives, but first, it was a return to the basic principles of a rusty working unit. While each member may have practiced on their own, a group setting is a different thing. Chemistry is both talent and long hours going through complex arrangements, arguments, and smoke breaks. or coffee breaks, or just breaks. Early tour drafts had an ambitious setlist that included When the Levee Breaks, the Wonton Song, Custard Pie right after Dazed and Confused, plus a couple more graffiti numbers, In My Time of Dying, Trample Underfoot. A very 1975 style setlist, but also on their drawing board was a potential and surprising comeback for Babe I'm Gonna Leave You, with Page performing pedal steel guitar duties. Based on the photographs, we can speculate John Jones would play acoustic guitar while Jimmy worked his slide chops on a 1972 MSA Classic D12 instrument. An old number, The Battle of Evermore, was tried out for the first time with Jones sharing vocal duties alongside Robert, plus Jimmy on mandolin and Bonzo on tambourine. They all joined backing vocal forces at different parts, and this only meant the acoustic set was brought back for the first time since Earl's Court. Like many of his 1975 outfits, Page wore a Peaches brand shirt, but this time with a familiar t-shirt design underneath. That's Roarer 714, a famous 70s pastime, aka Quaaludes. I'm not saying he took them, just Quaaludes were a trending topic among famous names in the entertainment business. Now Jimmy's mandolin was a Gibson style A2, which we can see on 2008's It Might Get Loud, where he played Battle of Evermore outside of Headley Grange. But it was not all soft textures and mellow passages at rehearsal. The band's rhythm section was overhauled into heavier, more potent spirits in tune with the music revolution of punk and new wave styles ahead. Presence was quite foretelling where rock and roll was going in 1977. It may have sold less copies than previous releases, but it wasn't outdated at all, but a relevant and mighty sonic competitor, further pushing the economy of electric movement. The industry was all about a tighter sound, shorter solos, if any, power chord blitzkrieg, and high treble mixes. John Jones recorded Achilles' Last Stand with a double-string Swedish Hackstrom 88, which gave the song its characteristic galloping feel. So he got new thundering weapons in the ways of alembic basses, 4 and 8 string models that are the source of online debate, with some stating these were actually Bevcar guitars made by an alembic employee. Jones took his new tools for a test drive along John Bonham, making a drastic turn away from his old Vistalite kit, the main protagonist for 1973 and 1975. Bonzo got a Ludwig stainless steel kit for a higher volume spectrum and punch. We can speculate if he was motivated by Carl Palmer's custom 1974 steel kit, and ironically, Greg Lake started using alembic basses in May 1977, almost mirroring Jones's instrument choice. Add in Zeppelin rehearsing at Manticore Studios and this theory grows by the minute. It was the place where the ELP and the Zeppelin planets collided. Now you wonder why Page didn't use his double neck guitar for live Achilles' Last Stand, considering he recorded the studio version's intro and outro with it. Jimmy brought 2 new artifacts to the Zeppelin equation: American-made Eventide harmonizers. Released in 1975, the H910 harmonizer was named after the Beatles' One After 909. Page got one and first used it on the 1976 Bonzo's Montreux drum experiment. Jimmy seemed to be in tune with the industry, as producer Tony Visconti used the H910 for the snare sounds on David Bowie's Low, recorded at almost the same time as Bonham's drum orchestra project. So the harmonizer would extend the sonic possibilities beyond Page's theremin and echo tape machine. The Eventide had pitch effect, delay, and a feedback generator. With Dazed and Confused out of the setlist, Page went for a guitar solo showcase where the harmonizer would dazzle crowds into a space odyssey journey, almost as if Page knew Star Wars would be premiered in May 1977. Robert Plant was also given a harmonizer, the H949 model, which was used for vocal harmonization, pitch effects, delay, and some stereo processing. Still in its infancy for singers, it's the one piece of gear that kinda makes the 1977 tour sound dated in places. So with Jones and Bonham's metallic sounding force, it was just natural 2 songs from Presence made the cut in the ways of Achilles' Last Stand and Nobody's Fault But Mine. Presence as an album had much live potential with its stripped down approach, much like Led Zeppelin 2. But while For Your Life could have worked, it was hard to cut any previous Zeppelin classics in favor of the funky riddles of Roy Orleans and Hot Song for Nowhere. T for One couldn't replace Since I've Been Loving You, and Candy Store Rock will get there. Fun fact, Jones wore a promo shirt to The Song Remains the Same poster, while Plant was spotted with both a Black Swan song and 1973 tour t-shirt. Bonham can be seen wearing a leather jacket, the same he used at the band's last 2 ever US shows at Oakland. It's January 1977. Plenty of new albums released that month included The Runaways, Queens of Noise. Robert Plant was probably excited about it as he attended their September 1976 show in LA. The Ramones were back with Leave Home, while David Bowie began his Berlin trilogy with Low. Progressive rock madman Gentle Giant released Playing the Fool, which you can hardly believe it's a live album. They were that good. But All Eyes that month belonged to Pink Floyd's Animals, further pushing the hard rock sound away from lengthy psychedelic jams into primal Dynamite Attack. 1977 felt like a year for a return to shape and form, and Zeppelin was not left behind. Jumble Jones shaved his beard and went back to the same Zeppelin movie t-shirt as Bonzo, who wore that same jacket later that year in the States. So the band held a new Musical Express magazine photo shoot based around 50s rockabilly. This would be issued in late February, and it captured the band letting loose in between a mammoth setlist rehearsal. You can see Jones playing an upright bass that would be used for Brown Rust Stomp. Jimmy Page is holding a 1959 Gibson ES5 Switchmaster Sunburst that he used on Candy Store Rock from Presence. If that track never sounded to you like a Les Paul or a Stratocaster, now you know why. This raises a question though. Did they rehearse this number at the Manticore sessions? It's hard to believe they didn't, at least once, with Page having the instrument at hand. This guitar could also have worked for In My Time of Dying, and well, Page did use a similar axe for it at the 2007 reunion. Robert Plant held a Gibson acoustic, signaling to 10 Years Gone, added onto the set for a pending number they should have done back in 1975. Page received a new Telecaster guitar around 1976, which included a Parsons B-Bender system that worked perfect for the opening lines of 10 Years Gone. By 1979, he replaced a maple neck in favor of a rosewood finish. Also on the Manticore photograph, we can spot Jones's 1962 Fender Jazz Bass, making one last appearance in Zeppelin history. Although it's still unknown why he brought it to rehearsals, it never came back to a Led Zeppelin concert in favor of his new weapons. Manticore sessions were all about working out the many adventurous music statements and shaking off the rust from not playing a show since the fall of Saigon. Like I said, Robert's leg was still recovering and had to watch his step while relearning some of his onstage moves. The final song selection would take Plant's health into consideration. As much as they could rehearse and have fun through the ordeal, there was tension mounting up in the face of an upcoming concert tour, their biggest one in America. Expectations in the United States of 1977 were at an all-time high thanks to the song Remains the Same effect. Add in Presence chart performance, and they had to bring back the cosmic energy like their forefathers were very used to. But the Manticore rehearsal space was not big enough to imagine the dimensions they would face in the States. Their February 26th NME article talked about their conviction to battle adversity while keeping the doors of creation open. There was a decisiveness of intent. They were veterans, 9 years in the Zeppelin business. How much bigger could the operation get? Page was 33 years old. Plant and Bonham were 28, and Jones was 31. The article discussed their rehearsal structure, as well as diving somewhat deep into the meaning behind Presence, where Plant admitted he was questioning everything, judging by the print lyrics of Hot Song for Nowhere. This article was revealing for fans, because there was little information as to what happened to the band after Earl's Court. Yes, people knew about Robert's car accident, but that was it. The lonely place at the top was real. Kings may be powerful, but many want to see their downfall. Led Zeppelin got ready to fly high again, back to the heights where they belonged. Now Bonham had the toughest job of all, a physically demanding schedule, and he could only breathe in and breathe out. Playing so many shows was physical graffiti for the mighty drummer. Like every other tour, the band's weight was on his shoulders, but this one was back to their debut album days of conquering America in full.